Okay, so in this part here, what we're going to look at is just going back over our Word document and seeing just some of the things we've listed off here, and then thinking about, okay, how do we change some of this if we have to in order to start modeling it. But what I'm also going to look at is how do we take this sort of 3D view that we have here and then start drawing out what we call our orthographic views. So orthographic views are a bit like mugshots that we can load into Maya to then have on either side for us to start modeling around. So especially when you're first starting modeling, or if you're doing really complicated models like cars or human-like characters or things like that, it's really good to have orthographics because it helps you to get that fine detail, but it also helps you to keep things in proportion. Okay, so even though it seems like a bit of overkill for something as simple as a crate, the good news about it is it's really easy to draw the orthographics for it, but also it means that you're getting practice at it so that later on when we start looking at more complicated shapes, you'll be able to then translate these into orthographics and model them as well. Now for the certificate, you do need to have orthographic images for 2 of the environments and your character as well. So we're hoping that by starting off this and giving you the practice at it, that by the time you get to doing the environment and your character, even though it's going to be really complicated sort of shapes, you'll be so well versed at doing these orthographic images that it won't matter. So back here in Krita, if I'm looking at just expanding this out, I'm going to resize the canvas. I'm going to go to the width here, and I'm going to change it if I haven't already to percentage, because I'm going to make it 200% wider. And I'm going to left click here, so it's basically going to create double the size but move it over to the left hand side there. If I just do it in center, it's just going to create brackets on either side, and then I'm just going to have to move things around, and that's just a waste of time. So I'm just going to do that, and here we go. So we've got this empty space here for us to be able to translate this into an orthographic image. So an orthographic image is a flat plane. So to give you an idea of what they look like, that's these in here. So if, for example, I have modeled my shape already inside of Maya, and I've just gray blocks that out. So like this. We can see here the orthographic image allows us to see if things are lined up properly. It doesn't allow us to tumble, so if I hold down Alt and left click, can't tumble the view. If I go to viewpoint here, camera tools and tumble tool, I can tumble it in here, but in this view here, can track, but I can't tumble. And that's because the idea of this is that they are just static sort of shots here. And the idea of an orthographic image is these 2 things should line up here. So I can get an idea of what it looks like from the front and the side, and potentially as well the top. So how do we create those images in here? Well, we've got this image here. So I'm just going to go to this layer, which is my background layer, and use the eyedrop tool to get that exact same color, then paint bucket it in. So we've done that. And I'm just going to create a new layer at the top here called front. And I'm even going to create another one on top of this just called guides. So Photoshop has this feature where you can actually put in these rulers and lines to it. We don't have that in this, so I'm just going to create some of my own. I'm going to make it a different color from that. I'm just going to make it like an orange. And I'm just going to go from the corner of my shape here. And basically all I'm doing is just ruling a straight line. And this is going to be the bottom of our crate. So it's very important to do it from here and not from this one. And then this one here is kind of where the sort of start of this shape is. If I hold down Shift, that'll draw it in a straight line as well. So if I'm from like this, if I hold down Shift, it'll do that. And then I'm just going to take it from the very top of that as well. So with those lines drawn in, now I can start using my blue again to draw in on this layer here where I want my lines to be. So as I've said before, I kind of want it to have a bit of a trapezium look here. So I want that style there. And then I'm just going to go straight up from here, straight up from here as well. And with this one, I can even start using my circle tool. So I couldn't use it before because it was on an angle, but here I can actually start to use it. So I can just get basics in there like that. Now if I ever want to erase stuff, I've got to select the paintbrush tool and then click here on the eraser so that it actually erases that tool out. And then remember to go back to my pen when I want to draw things. Cool, so that's the sort of start there. Again, I don't have to go into super detail with this, like I don't have to necessarily do all the in cuts and everything like that, because I'm just looking at trying to get this sort of happening here. I know that there is a circle here. Oops, that's way too thick. That's way too thin. It's a little bit lower, like so. And then I'm just going to have a circle like that. Cool, so that's our front orthographic. Now if I want the side orthographic, it's the same thing. I'm just going to draw in the lines. So now again, if I don't know something, like I don't know if this sort of curves in and does the same sort of thing as it does on the side there, I can always go back to my original shape here and see that like the bottom there, it's actually kind of square. So that's exactly what the orthographic would look like. So as weird as it feels, that's what I've got there. Cool. Now, if I wanted to load it in here into Maya, I'll just go through that now. This is where we're going to have to start creating a new project folder because we want those images to show up. So I'm going to go best practices here, go new, go into the share drive, 2021, cert 2, Ben Ryder, and actually I'll go cert 2, and I'll go in here and call this one storage. Actually, I'm not going to call it here because just need to select the folder here as well. I'll name it, and I'll call this one chest. Accept. And then file, set project, chest. And now I'm going to make sure that when I crop these out, I save them. So when I'm copying them, I'm going to go ahead and copy merge, and that's going to take all the layers that are there. I'm going to go new, create from clip, save as, and then put it into that same project folder. So 2021, cert 2, Ben Ryder, cert 2 materials, chest, source images, and we're going to call this one side. And I'm going to make sure I save it as a proper document, not just the Krita one. So PNG. Actually, I'm going to go JPEG for this one. Maya has a tendency to try and apply transparency when you put a PNG in there. Not all the time, but sometimes, so I like to just go with a JPEG sometimes. And same thing here, copy merged, new, save as, JPEG, and we're going to call this one front. So now that I've saved them in there, I can actually load them into this scene. So I can go image plane, import image, front, because this is the front, and then image plane, import image, side, like so. So that's created these 3D shapes here that I can move and scale around. First thing I want to do is check that these lines line up, and they do. So now I'm going to move these out to the edge of my grid. I'm also going to raise them up so the floor of that is lined up with the floor of the grid. And now I can start modeling. And so the good thing about this is that now I can actually check it against something. so I can see here that things are changing in both views. I can line things up. Like so. And then on this side. Like so. And I can do all the same things that I was going to do there before, like extrude in, extrude down, lift up like that. And then still keep it as separate parts there. A bit of added just security that I know, yep, this is on track to do what it's supposed to do. Cool. Like that. And so again, that's just that basic sort of shape there, and I can start seeing whether this is actually working or whether I need to reconsider what sort of shapes I'm using there. Okay, so you will need these orthographic drawings, so I know they can be a little bit tedious to draw sometimes, but for at least 2 of your environments you will need them, and they do help later on when you start getting to more complicated shapes. So it's worth learning how to use them now, so that when we get to more complicated shapes, especially with humans, I find it's very important to keep the proportions so that your head and your chest and your legs and your arm all still fit the same proportions. So it's just something to consider. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I will leave you to that, and then we will come back in a minute and see how you're going. But if we can try and get those orthographic images done, then that's a huge step done for our Cert 2 as well as for the digital communication solution. Cool, excellent. I'll catch you next time.